Greetings. I'm not sure if you can see me. I know I am definitely live on YouTube. So if you are in the chat, let me know. Um, I can't see everything, but I'm gonna try. I think I can see Brother Christopher Magneto in the chat. If you're still there, just give me a 1, 2, 3 or something. Let me know that you can hear me. Let me know if you can see me clearly as well too. I'm gonna try and increase the light. Okay, now I'm upside down. I'm sideways. Y'all could see me still. Greetings, precious Stephanie. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being in our sovereign space. Can you all hear me? I think I'm a little bit low today. And plus, it's hard to see the screen. But we are here. Greetings, peace, Sister Naya. So, um, yeah, I wanted to just greet everyone, make sure you can hear me and see me clearly. I am, just my mind's on food, but my mind's on just, like how people are functioning and moving in terms of food insecurity. I know there's always conversation about food insecurity. You're dark. Naya says I'm dark. Let me see. Is this better? Is this better? I know it is. Oh, that was just a couple degrees. Can you imagine? Look at that. Oh my goodness. Perspective. Look at that. A couple degrees. That's all it took. Let me see. There you go. Let me know if you can see me now. That should be much better. I think the light's on my face. I think the light's on my face. All right. Um, I'll wait. But yeah, while I wait, I'll just say, um, is it still dark or is it brighter now? I think it's brighter now. I could see that. So yeah, um, last I've been thinking about, yeah, let me continue with my thought. I've been thinking about, again, just food security and how um, that impacts us, right? But more importantly, how the, like global affairs and global experiences actually have a micro impact on our own experiences with food and food insecurity. I know that food insecurity is always spoken of from the perspective of, you know, gender based differences when it comes to payment and women versus men and, racial equity and things like that. But I really wanted us to just look at what is food insecurity, first of all, and how that's different from what's considered hunger, right? Because at one point, like I've heard the two being utilized as if they're the same, and the truth is they're not. One is, you know, at the other end of the spectrum, so to speak. And I still think that hunger is not at the end. I think conflict and crisis is what they can hunger can devolve into, I guess. For those of you who can see me and hear me, I'm going to check in one more time just to make sure you can see or hear me, because I haven't seen anyone share anything in the chat within the last couple minutes, so I'm not quite sure. I want to make sure that we're still connected. All right, I want to make sure we're still connected. I'll just wait just a couple minutes to see if I get a response from the chat. Chat. But I'll chat in the meantime. I won't just sit here. Um, okay, good. Thank you. Pardon. Sorry for interrupting the flow then, because I just wanted to check. So, yeah, um, there's a difference between what we consider hunger and what we consider food insecurity. And food insecurity is different in that food insecurity really focuses on the limited availability of nutritionally adequate food, but it's also the one's ability to have access to food. All right, so those things are important. And when we think about hunger, hunger focuses on the individual scale. Whereas when we talk about food insecurity, the conversation now becomes an expansive one. We're talking about, the household. All right, we're not just talking about the individual, but the household. And when we start to talk about food insecurity, two things are important. We're talking about the economic, um, and we're also talking about the social implications. Economic and social implications. Both are important to consider when we talk about food insecurity. Now, one in every four Americans are food insecure, right? And that data was from back in toward the end of 2019, actually. And since then it has increased, right? It has increased. Now we have one in three, right? And so every sorry, not one in three, every one in the, one is global, and one data piece of data is global and the other piece of data is specific to the US. And I'm gonna go with what I remember. One in four, right? Which is specific to the US. And so the thing to consider also is, how does that spread across the different households, right? Because for those who are food insecure, there are programs available for them, but then I thought of considering, like, what is the difference between the percentage of homes where there are like whole families versus households, or yeah, households, I won't necessarily say homes, where there are men with children, and then mothers with, pardon my correction, women with children. All right. And so the higher percentages are actually, of course, 34.4% um, are, of course, women with children, right? And of course, the lower percentages are those for homes where we have mothers and fathers in place. It's a whole family. And I think that, not I think, that percentage is 12.1%, right? Just to be sure. And these households depend on food stamps. All right, they depend on food stamps. So, the, uh, like, I thought that was important to consider, because then you could see, the difference in variation of the type of home structure and how that affects the household's reliance on food stamps, and like whether they fall into the category of being food insecure, right? But I don't want to touch on the, how should I say, like the more local reasons why we are finding that there's an increase in food insecurity. I actually wanted to jump into some more conversation around the larger picture, right? But before I do, I wanted to ask you all, right, in the chat, just share. I know I'm not focusing on a mindset that really indulges, oh my gosh, what am I do? I have food, I have to choose between food or transportation. What am I going to do? I'm not entertaining that, but I do want to know, if that were a situation that was posed to you, what would you choose? Would there be a choice? Or maybe I can ask the question this way, right? I'll ask the question in this way. Um, what do you think are the percentages, just about, what are the percentages of those who live in the US who face food insecurity? What are some of the percentages of those who chose food over education? And then what about the percentage of those who chose food over transportation? Can you all see me? Oh my gosh. Okay, good. It keeps cutting. So I am not sure if I'm visible now or whether y'all can see me or hear me. All right, but I'll continue. Right. So I was asking, what do you think some of those percentages are? All right. We're going to compare four things. Let's compare food, education, transportation, and electricity. Let's look at those four. And I'm thinking that we can look at those four because it makes it easier. Pardon, my battery is really low. It just makes it easier to compare. And I'll wait a little bit, but while I wait, I'm going to talk a little bit about the bigger picture, right? And the bigger picture for me is, and not just me, but the bigger picture in terms of what's causing food insecurity globally, um, are things like the economics, things like conflict, Cove P. I'm not gonna say the whole name. Um, those are all reasons why we have these increased numbers of food insecurity. Right. The first thing I considered was there was conflict, ongoing conflict between a couple of they're called oil supply nations, right? And so what I found was, and you're probably saying, well, why does this connect to food? How is it? It connects to food because we need to be aware of what's actually happening, because what's happening is affecting the food costs and the food prices, right? So we can talk and complain about food prices, but the truth is we don't understand what is, you know, causing it, right? And it's not just about price gouging. It's not. There are other deeper issues here. And so the conflict I'm speaking of was this particular disagreement between what's considered OPEC nations, right? That has been resolved, but the truth is that caused significant increase in um, gas prices. And so gas prices actually means increased prices for transportation of food, right? So food delivery, um, all of those. I kid you not. I always say those huge trucks that run across all of the highways across states, they are the life and blood of um, this economy, so to speak, because you know, once we saw like a lot of restrictions and limitation being put in place, we noticed that there was a decrease in, like food being brought across states and food supply. But increased gas prices actually increased cost of transportation, and that in turn increased cost of food. But something that I learned that I never knew was that whenever you have a direct increase in gas prices, you're going to find that there's a direct increase in the cost of fertilizer for food, right? So now you have additional or increases of costs for farmers, right? Because again, these are two products that are directly connected. So again, the food cost prices are a result of increased fertilizers, and then of course increase in transportation as well. Um, and then there was also something that I never realized. I didn't know this. No, I know many of you probably have come across conversations or maybe even articles or so. I don't know. I'm interested in those things. I always find them, reading about them and learning about those who actually take other plant products and use them to create biofuel. So one of the things that is actually mandated is that when oil prices increase significantly, what happens is that sugar and sugar and corn are used to create biofuel. They actually force companies to take the um, the plant and utilize it for biofuel, as opposed to using harvesting it and using it as food. All right, so that leans on the food supply, and because that leans on the food supply, it drives up prices as well. Right, so I thought that was something to know, because then you get to see how intricate the network is when it comes to food, and also how very delicate it is as well too. um because of the limitations, I spoke about that, like previously, just touched on it in terms of COVID, all of those shutdowns and so on caused a lot of the restrictions in transportation, so I know that was affected. But there's also something else to consider, right? A lot of countries, some of the countries that are going through drought right now, um, Brazil, Argentina, these countries actually export a lot of grain that we use, right? And so that, because there's because of the implication of drought and so on, it actually reduces certain access. And I also consider too that, I think it's Hurricane Ida, right? So Hurricane Ida actually, when it hit Louisiana, it hit one of its major grain ports, right? And even though that port is specifically for export, um, it 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 actually affected the economy, right? Because there was only so much grain that could be exported during that time, and I think there's still, um, it had some of the ports are not completely up and running, so that has a significant effect on the economy, and therefore um, an effect on food prices, right? So those are some things to consider. And there, when we think about some of the three major staples, right? We think about oil, and wheat is another one, right? Grain, and sugar, right? Because sugar is really big. So it's wheat, sugar, and oil. Those three have increased by 33% globally. That's just those three. We're not talking about, food in other countries and so on. Just across all um, countries, just globally, that 33% actually has affected again the food prices that we see. I'm going to pause and jump into the chat. Kim says that she thinks food. Okay, this goes back to the. I'll just repeat it. This goes back to the question, and pardon, I didn't put the question in the chat so that I can highlight it on the banner, but I can include it in my description. Right. The question I asked was, what are some of the percentages of that people that what are the percentages you would allocate to people selecting food over um, transportation, food over education, food over electricity, and food over health. And so Kim placed, she said 20% would go for food, 30% would go for transportation, 25% education, and electricity would be 25%. Kim also says, due to the economy, global warming, and the government forcing people to make extremely hard decisions. Yep, this is true. The it is, you know, there are some countries, um, that engage with what's called a social contract, and all they're required to do is provide food at a low cost, right? And so when that's not available, and also when people choose not to succumb to what they're being forced to take or do, then a crisis, right, occurs. and many times that devolves into violence. So I guess I'm sharing all of this for us to be very wary and mindful of um, what is possible, right? Due to just the observation of high food prices and how it's affecting other parts of the globe. Again, Braz- um, Brazil and Argentina, those are areas that are experiencing drought right now. And because of that drought, it's affecting the amount of grain that other parts of the world um, that is shipped or exported to other parts of the world. And I keep thinking about also China. Like right now, China has been for the last couple of months purchasing, and this is probably old news to others, but it is new news to me when you start looking at how all of these little parts of the system are trickling down and then affecting each of us in many different ways, but also when it comes to food, right? Which is that's like one of the number one things when it comes to survival. Um, so yeah, I was just thinking about those countries, and then I also remembered that a couple years ago, Chief actually did a video. He has done a couple videos actually that focuses on what's happening with the economy. But one of the videos I remember really focused on the grain reserves, and how those have dwindled. And that's one of the things that we find um, is also important to pay attention to, because nobody's going to have those supplies to dole out or to share in the case of a crisis. Those are things that we should be paying attention to and stocking up on. So as a prepper or someone who is aspiring to pay attention to um, food and storage from the perspective of a prepper, making sure we see and follow what's happening in the on a global scale and how it affects us is important, so that we are adequately prepared. Like that was one of the major reasons why I wanted to just touch base with everyone and share a little bit about food insecurity. I know there were some hiccups with the connection and maybe even the mic and the lighting. I apologize for that. I am sitting outside. Um, but we'll be back again for another Sovereign Sunday. We'll be doing another dish, and I will share, if not today, later on tomorrow, what that dish will be. I haven't decided just yet, because I always decide and then I change my mind. But I'll make sure to share that. And so I will connect with you all again for another Sovereign Sunday at 7 p.m. Um, yeah, that's it. This is all I really wanted to share. If there are any questions or any additional comments, please drop them in the chat before we sign off, or place them in the comment section below the video. I had a few questions, but I don't see a lot of you in the chat, so I will probably just add them to the description. Peace to you all. Wellness is yours. Hold on to it. Thank you for joining Kim and Naya and Precious Stephanie and Brother Chris. All right. Peace. Enjoy your day.